We have the Cardinals, we have the Chocolaires, we have all these people that made Black music in Canada part of the conversation. Now we influence the conversation.
The new Canadian original documentary series Sounds Black explores the origins and impact of Black music in Canada. Over the past few decades, Canada's music industry has flourished, thanks to artists like Drake, The Weeknd, Daniel Caesar, and Kaytranada. But this success would not be possible without the trailblazers who laid the foundation for Black Canadian music to thrive. The Sounds Black four-part series takes viewers on a journey through the diasporic roots of Black Canadian music and its path to global success. Now, for more insight on this, we're joined now by the series director, award-winning filmmaker, Cazhhmere Downey. Cazhhmere, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so this country has so many incredible Black artists, as we just saw there. So there's a lot of inspiration to draw from, but I'm so curious, who or what exactly was the catalyst for you to create this documentary?
For me, the catalyst was just, being a young Black girl growing up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm a multi-generational Canadian, and so when it comes to Black music, it's literally embedded in the fabric of my culture and part of what makes me who I am. So a project like this was very important to me to tell a story to the Canadian audience about all the amazing success stories and trailblazers that set the foundation for the platform that all the artists in Canada, Black artists that come out of Canada stand on today.
And I want to talk about some of those trailblazers because your documentary features some of Canada's Black music icons like Julie Black, we see right there, Cardinal Offishall, Deborah Cox, Fifi Dobson, Keisha Shante, just to name a few. So how are you able to bring all of these incredible artists, musicians together in this documentary?
It wasn't easy. It took about 2.5 years to put this documentary together. We interviewed a plethora of artists, many that we didn't even get to talk to just because there are so many, and some are no longer with us, some are in other areas of the world. But it was fun. It was a labor of passion for me. It wasn't really like work. It was like a music nerd's dream to just talk to so many people that have influenced me and artists that I grew up loving, and finding out who influenced and inspired them to become the artists that they are.
Well, it must have been so fun working on this project, a passion project for you. But of course, there's so many different layers. I feel like the series has so many different deep layers to it, including the fact that it highlights the profound connections between Black Canadian music and the country's history, including the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. So how does that history shape the music we hear today?
Especially when it comes to Black music and in today's, industry, when they talk about a Canadian sound, specifically a Toronto sound, and defining what that means, it's a mixture of a lot of things, which I felt important to really lay out to our audience where that truly comes from. It's like all these different sounds that make Black Canadian music uniquely distinctive is a part of, it's embedded in our history, going back from the Atlantic slave trade and the Black migrants that came during that wave. And it brings sounds of gospel, or when a lot of the, Black musicians during the 1940s were coming up from America during Prohibition eras, and that brought sounds of jazz. And in the late 60s, early 70s, the first major wave of Caribbean immigrants to come to this country, and that brought sounds influenced by the Caribbean, reggae, ska, lovers rock, all those things, and all these different sounds that have now come together in the present day to truly influence the sound of Black Canadian music, whether it's hip hop, dance, R&B. It all just, you can hear the influences and the infusions of all these sounds that have historically been planted here since the early days.
So Cazhhmere, obviously a lot of research went into the production of this series. I'm wondering, are there any fascinating historical facts or just facts in general that came up during that time that really stood out to you?
I think for me, the facts that really stood out is just, the struggle that it truly was for Black Canadian artists in this country to exist. You know, in Canada, we seem to think that, you know, the levels of racism in this country don't really truly exist. But when you sit and you talk to these musicians and listen to the struggles that they had to be able to perform in proper venues, the struggle to, you know, get radio airplay, the struggles to get, you know, record contracts in this country, it was just really an eye opener, not only to myself, who, you know, had a previous knowledge of a lot of these struggles, but to the greater audience of Canada, to know how truly difficult it was and still is in a lot of senses for a Black Canadian artist to sustain a career in this country. But despite, you know, all these shortcomings, we've been able to achieve so much, which I think is truly beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for this project, this passion project that has now turned into an incredible documentary for people to watch. Canadian Black history, music, and all the singers, the rappers, the artists, all together in one place. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your time today on the show, Cazhhmere.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That is director and award-winning filmmaker, Cazhhmere Downey.